Welcome back. We're joined by Olivier Guitta. He is a very impressive intellect on matters involving the nexus between our challenges posed by Islamists and the freedoms that we take for granted in countries like the one he's living in at the moment, the United Kingdom, and for that matter, our own. Olivier is the director of research at the Henry Jackson Society and an expert on counterterrorism matters who's been briefing widely in government circles and also appearing frequently in the media. Interestingly enough, he spent 12 years as a portfolio manager in New York, so he knows the business side as well. Olivier, welcome back. It's good to have you with us. Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year, Frank. Always a pleasure to be on.
Listen, we've been talking of late about Britain, the Islamization of it. Soren Kern, a colleague at the Gatestone Institute, has written impressively on some of the latest and very worrying developments in the UK. This really seems to be evidence of the accelerating progress of what the Muslim Brotherhood calls civilization jihad. Give us a quick sense of what the Brotherhood's presence in the UK is and the danger it represents there, you think?
Listen, it's not by chance that the French security services came up in the 1990s with the term Londonist and to describe London as the main hub for terrorists of all kinds. Really, it has been going on, I would say, since the early 70s when a lot of Arab banks set up shop in London and were even to some French sources agreed that there was a golden goose and that there was an agreement between the UK and some Arab states, especially in the Gulf, as far as being able to host Islamists and then get in return funding.
We're visiting with Olivier Guitta. He is an expert on the matters involving the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamism more generally at the Henry Jackson Society, where he is the director of research. And we were just talking about the sort of, well, Faustian deal, I guess you might call it, between Britain and the Arabs that translates into accommodation of Islamists if they bring money. How is that manifesting itself now in terms of infrastructure build-out and increased aggressiveness on the part of these Islamists in the United Kingdom?
It's interesting that things have turned around because you've seen how mostly Saudi Arabia has been turning its back on the Muslim Brotherhood and now see the Muslim Brotherhood as the biggest enemy. So whole funding has changed from, I would say, Saudi Arabia to actually Qatar. Qatar was the main country that's funding the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. And so it's just a matter of switching sides. But as far as the process of penetration of the Muslim Brotherhood within Britain and Europe, this has been going on, as I mentioned, for the past 40 years unabated, especially since our politicians, both in Europe and unfortunately sometimes in the U.S., do not view the Muslim Brotherhood as a threat in any shape, way, or form.
Yeah, to the contrary, they seem to be very much embracing it. Certainly in our own government, and I get the impression that that's happening in the United Kingdom as well. Let me just tick off a couple of things that Soren talked about, just to get a sense of whether you agree that these are happening and are manifestations of the kind of accommodations that have been made at the governmental level or societal level. We've got Muslim gangs masking themselves as the Muslim London Patrol, who are saying this is a Muslim area and we need Sharia. We've got Sharia courts operating in Britain to the great detriment of women there. Sex crimes, including Muslim taxi drivers raping female passengers, and a British judge apparently saying no woman can expect to be safe while traveling in a cab in Britain. And this so-called child grooming business of Muslims trafficking and torturing and raping British girls. This sounds like, the unraveling of Western society in Britain. Is this overstating the problem as you see it, Olivier Guitta, or is it just sort of early indicators of where this thing's headed?
Honestly, it's been a while that because of that whole veneer of multiculturalism, that Britain has been, I would say, at the avant-garde of really being a place of very good location for Islamists and especially the Muslim Brotherhood. They've gone a step forward compared to any other countries in Europe as far as accommodating the Muslim Brotherhood, because they see that as either not wanting to infringe in the culture of some Muslims within Britain society, but as well, it's been really problematic to see how naive the approach has been, and how really now it has gone to a certain level whereby now Muslim Brotherhood exiles from Egypt are actually setting shop in London. So it's not just the European movement that is getting traction in Britain, but now you have the leadership, which makes it even more troublesome than it was before.
Yeah. And has there been in Britain, as we've certainly seen in the United States, Olivier, a kind of delusion that as long as these Islamists are not engaging in violence, they're okay. They're not only okay, that they are to be embraced and promoted and legitimated and otherwise supported as the antidote to these violent types, even if their purposes are exactly the same, or their objectives at least are exactly the same, namely the imposition of Sharia.
Actually, it is true that they've been really embraced. The problem now is that compared to just a year ago, they're being seen as victims with whatever happened in Egypt. And so they're getting another dimension that we didn't have before. I would put to you that some in the British spheres were reaching out because they were seeing them as a way of shelter, indeed, as you said, to avoid violence on the streets. But now they're being seen as victims. So they have the moral high ground, which they didn't have a year ago. So I would put you that the situation is much worse than before.
So, and when you say they, you're specifically speaking of Muslim Brotherhood leaders who are now transplanting themselves as victims from Egypt to Britain and being given an opportunity to operate their global sort of Sharia civilization jihadist program from the United Kingdom safe haven.
That's correct. And that's really something else. I mean, there is, as soon as Egypt put the Muslim Brotherhood and classified it as a terrorist organization, the SEO here came up quickly with an answer saying that Britain doesn't see the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization at all. We
have to leave it at that, Olivier. I'm frankly very anxious to continue this conversation and hope we'll have a chance to visit with you early and often in 2014. Thank you for the work you're doing at the Henry Jackson Society and specifically for the insights on what the trajectory is that clearly these brothers and these Islamists more generally have in mind for all of us, now becoming more and more manifest in one of our most important allies, certainly our most important European ally, Great Britain. God bless you, sir. Keep it up, and we'll talk with you again very soon. Next up, we'll visit with Andy McCarthy on this same subject, only what's happening in America.